So let's get into it then. James, first things first, how are you?
I'm great, man. Yeah, loving the lockdown. Social distancing is my preferred state of things. So
Okay.
yeah, it just came about all the death and all that sort of stuff.
Well, you're talking a lot about what's going on, I suppose, on the record. So we'll get to that in a second. But first, I'd like to talk to you about kind of how you got into music, and now you have written a book about kind of
Yeah.
your experiences in the music industry. So when you started writing that, what was the first thing that you thought of? Well, I have to put this in the book.
Yeah, I don't really know. It's strange looking back because I wrote it last year, and it takes long to get to the point where you can get it published and edited
Sure.
and all that. So for me, it's kind of like a year old for me,
Okay.
But I mean, the time that I sat down to write it, I wrote the whole thing in like 2 or 3 months. It was like really for a book. It just every day I just sat down and just went through it in kind of chronological order. And just like 2 or 3 months it was done. But I don't really know why I started doing it now. I don't know what the motivation to sit down and do it. The band broke up in December 2019, and I started writing. The year before, 2018, and I started writing it January 2019.
Okay.
So perhaps there was a little bit of like, okay, that's over now, and it was sort of like, a little bit of closure, sort of like telltale. I don't know. It's just a strange one. I've never written a book before, so yeah.
Yeah, the way it sounds, it's like you had a moment of reflection after that the band breaking up, just to kind of see where you were, what you've done in the past, and then where to go on from there.
I think so. I think it was my way of sort of like coming to terms with, okay, there's a big chunk of my life there that's now over. Share some of that stuff that happened, the funny stories, the experiences, and a little bit of what we learned along the way. Because when we came on the scene, the music industry was still in the middle of its crash. We were going transformation from the old industry to the new industry, and we were sort of in the middle of that. So I saw both sides. I saw the whole transition and kind of lived and made mistakes through it. So I felt like I had quite an interesting perspective, I think, to share for like new bands and old bands who might sort of resonate with it as well. And it made a lot of mistakes. We got screwed by everybody. We did a lot of stuff and a lot of crazy stuff. And I just thought maybe we had an interesting story to tell. And normally with rock and roll books, it's normally the 1%, the rock stars. It's all about the sex, drugs, and the rock and roll, and smashing hotel rooms and the millions of dollars. This is the opposite of that. This is what happens to like the rest of the bands, like everybody else. And why can't this story be told? So I thought I'll do it.
Well, that's an interesting point you made, because I've read a lot of those books, the Keith Richards and all of them, but yeah, you don't read a lot of them about kind of the struggles that the music industry entails, and kind of because even the way you describe writing in your book, that shows a lot of kind of work ethic and determination to get things done in a way. So if we look at that past part of your career, what was the constant motivation to keep doing all of the things that you were doing?
I don't know. I think I'm a little bit crazy. I think I've got a little something in me that's just, it's not even rational. It's irrational. I mean, a sane person wouldn't do it. The sane person would be like, this is ruining my life. I haven't had a day off or a weekend or a night off in 10 years. This isn't normal. You know what I mean? And I tell that story in the book as well. It's in your blood, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like rock and roll. Most people don't earn any money. Most of the time it is a struggle. You can't hold down a job. You can't hold down a relationship. It takes everything from you. But for some reason, you can't help it. It's like a drug, So I think for me, like all the other things that I do, like setting up a label and setting up a music publishing company and doing my solo albums and my essays and things that I do, it's all part of the same thing. It's just, if I don't have that, then I don't know what else people do in life. Like normality scares me. Comfortable,
So were you like this from an early age? Were you kind of, because I believe you were around 11 when you found the guitar?
Yeah.
And so were you immediately obsessed with music and guitar? Were you drawn in immediately?
Immediately, yeah. I'm the same with everything. I get obsessed about everything. So before the guitar, I've always been into like quite solitary kind of activities. So I was big into like making my own toys out of Lego and drawing my own comic books and things. I did everything quite by myself. You know, I was happy with that. And reading, I love reading. And then when I got into the guitar, it was like the perfect, you know, it was the toy for a kid like that, you know. So yeah, I just became obsessed with it. I taught myself, and then from there I taught myself how to like produce records, taught myself how to sing, and taught myself how to set up a label. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes along the way. It took me a long time to learn the things I learned, and it's taught. But yeah, I tend to get obsessed about something. I was obsessed about drinking, so I had to stop that.
Fair enough.
I was obsessed about caffeine, so I've had to stop that. You know, I get obsessed.
Okay. And so is there one pitfall you can maybe share with us, that the mistake you've made that maybe starting musicians or any musician can get some wisdom out of?
Well, I've made it pretty much all the mistakes you can make. I think the big thing for me was, a lot of the mistakes I made was when I started doubting myself and I started listening to others, because nobody really cared about it as much as I did, because it was my music, my band, and I lived and breathed it. And you know, so I would think long and hard about the decisions that I wanted to make, and the consequences would affect me because it was my band and my music and my life. So I think a lot of the times, a lot of the big things that cost me time and money and pain and were when I started listening to other people who it didn't matter either way whether it worked or whether it didn't, because it didn't affect them. So I think the older I get now and the more experience I've got, when I look back, I realize that actually, you know, I kind of should have trusted myself more. And because I work hard, you know, there's no issue there, and I care and I think about it, and I try and make the best decision I can, and then I crack on with it. So I think I lost a lot of time when I started listening to other people who it didn't affect me too much, you know. So I would say, yeah, everything is uncertain. You know, when you're in a band or any walk of life, you know, you don't know whether you're going to be here tomorrow. So everything is uncertain. There's no definites in life. So the best thing you do is just trust yourself, make the best decision you can, and roll with it, and hope you get lucky, you know, but you may not.
And well, you talk about kind of both the good times and the bad times, because obviously it's, I suppose, a very up and down industry in a way, but even from day to day, where traveling is boring, I suppose, but then you get to spend that hour on stage, and so there's a lot of this going on.
Yeah.
And then kind of getting back to your motivation, because I'm fascinated by what drives people, kind of on a day-to-day basis, and even now with the new album, what drives you to put this album out?
I don't know, man. Like I say, it's just that thing. It's just in me. I mean, I'm very. There's not a lot of planning with me. It just comes. I mean, I'm very confusing for people that have just discovered me. I'm a very confusing artist, because they listen to an album like the new one, which is like heavy political hard rock, and then they look at my last one, which is like singer-songwritery, almost pop in some places, you know. And then the stuff I did with Kaishira is all quite heavy, progressive, alternative stuff. So I've always just kind of tried to be as honest as I can with what I want to express. So if that's an acoustic ballad, you know, about being in love, then I feel I should express that as honestly as I would a political, angry, anti kind of song, you know? Right. So, yeah, my motivation is basically whatever comes to me, whether it's a book or a love song or a heavy progressive song or experimental electronica, whatever is in there, and I got to get it out, so I just put it out.
So what does that say about, you mentioned kind of the new album being rocky, heavy at times, very political in nature. So obviously then that's a reflection of kind of what's going on, not only in the world, but in your mind as well. So can you take me back to that birthplace, so to say, of the record?
Yeah, sure. Well, the record was written like, I started writing it December, and then I finished writing it by like February. I was recording it in February, and then by March it was mastered. So I mean, that was before the lockdown. In fact, I picked up the master disc on the day that they locked down in the UK. Disc in my studio when they locked it down. So yeah, so the album wasn't really written about where we're at now. I mean, since then, we've had the lockdown, and we've had all the Black Lives Matter. We've had all the protests in America, which is still happening, and the world's gone crazy. And now the singles come out. It looks as if I'm talking about the situation now, but it was written before. It was more about, Brexit and Boris Johnson and Trump and all that sort of stuff that was already going on. And I was, in my mind, I was thinking, for Christ's sake, we need to make anger great again. We need to, enough of this, we need to stand up and, and say no more, But ever since I wrote the album, people have been doing just that. The whole world is taking to the streets. So,
like you say, is it? Do you see a lot of hope in what's happening now?
I don't know, man. I don't know. I like to maintain hope, but I'm also very cynical. I mean, and I don't know if you follow British politics much, but when Johnson got in, it was a choice between Boris Johnson or Jeremy Corbyn.
Right.
Which I'm a lefty, so I mean, for me, Jeremy Corbyn was like the first proper Labour leader that we've had in generations. You know what I mean? And I thought it was a done deal. I thought, right, here we go, man. This is the guy that the people want. And then we chose Boris Johnson, So I lose faith in humanity sometimes,
And then a similar thing happened in the States, I suppose, where a lot of people felt very hopeful about Bernie Sanders. And then, we know who we got.
Exactly. Yeah, great.
But so
there's what's going on in people's minds. But I mean, it's important to maintain hope, because if you just give up, then you've got no chance. So you've got to stay hopeful, but there is a kind of underlying cynicism that I keep at most.
I share that thought at times. I have to admit, but that goes into the song "Mind Revolution," then, because you kind of need to, and I suppose Autopsy as well, which talks about, I suppose, false idols or following the wrong people in life. So what would? How would we, this is going to be way too philosophical, but how would we achieve kind of opening up our minds in a way?
It's difficult these days, man, because technology plays such a factor in it, and these algorithms are a pain in the ass, man, because, like my video for the Power, I put it up 2 weeks ago and YouTube immediately took it down. It was off the platform for a few days. And when I spoke to them about it, it was because of the imagery of the statues falling down and the protesting. But all of that stuff came from within YouTube. But an algorithm decided that, the format or whatever, and took it down. And there's nothing you can do about that then, because you're dealing with a computer. And these algorithms control everything that we read on the internet, what's in our social media, and with Brexit and, and Trump and all that sort of stuff. A lot of these are control, the outcome is a result of social media and algorithms, because they put these adverts on news feeds, to make people think, oh shit, this is happening, that's happening. So I mean, without accurate information, it's very difficult, because people are emotional, people around the world are struggling, they've got hardships, they're out of work, and if you tell them this is the enemy, after a while, that's what they're going to believe,
Right.
So tough one, because we're emotional animals, and I think people generally will do the best, because I think that's in all of us, to sort of do the best in those situations. But when your head is so full of all this programming all of the time, from these billionaire campaigns, which none of us can battle with because they're just too big, then it is a battle. So I suppose a song like Mind Revolution is about that. It's about, free your mind, and you're invincible.
You mentioned reading. Is that one of the things you like to do when you kind of want to get away from things, or want to free your mind, something?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I always have. My mother's a big reader, and my dad's a big music guy. So I grew up listening to Frank Zappa and Pink Floyd and all the. And my mum was always reading hardcore, sort of John Pilger and Chomsky. So I had a good upbringing. But it's the same now. Books are my passion. It's amazing I've not written anything before, really, considering I read loads of books. And yeah, it could be anything, mostly nonfiction, politics, science, history, all that sort of stuff. So I just love jamming that information in there.
And then I assume a lot of that seeps through into the music as well, some thoughts and ideas, or just narratives in a way. One of the other song I found very interesting was Struggles.
Right.
What was the beginning point of that song?
I can lose it like the flick of a switch these days. Streets, this life that's bringing me down. I think that's it.
Okay. Was that a particular moment, a particular day that you?
Well, it's sort of about. I was trying to talk about the personal feeling of all this stuff, because Beck was talking about the bigger issues, you know, taking to the streets and the problems in the world, and I was talking about a lot about the issues, and I think Struggles was just trying to remember that all of this affects actual people at the end of the day. You know, all of us are struggling with something, and there's a little bit of myself in there, but also it was more about, you know, trying to bring these issues down to the personal rather than the political.
And when it comes to these type of songs, I don't know how you write songs, but do the words come before the music, or is it the other way around?
Other way around, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do all the music first.
So does the music influence kind of what words you write?
Sometimes it does, yeah, because I write the melodies and everything, and it tends to be with like whatever words I come up with at the time. So I hear the melody and then I'll put a vocal down just to get it down so I can remember it, and it'll be like whatever comes out. But then the problem is that sticks in my head and it kind of makes it complicated. The word and things. So then when I actually write the real words, I'm kind of stuck to the kind of rhythm that's there already. So yeah, that it is a bit tricky, because like if I didn't care about the lyrics, I could just write whatever and it would be fine. But because lyrics are important to me as well, I've got to try and take the thing I want to talk about and squeeze it into the music. Yeah, so it's a battle.
And when you, because you've made this album, I suppose, in a relatively quick period, in maybe 4 or 5 months' time.
Yeah, about 3 or 4 months.
Three even. Is it an added? What is the added value of being able to do so much yourself, in a way, to be able to play all those instruments, to be able to kind of have that vision ready and execute as well?
Well, I think the added value is exactly what you said. It's the ability to just get it done, you know, instead of like waiting for ages, because a lot of stuff is down to budget. You know, if you want to go to a studio and record it, you've got to be able to pay for it somehow, you know. Your artwork done and your videos, you know, or if you can't play the drums, you've got to find someone that can, and you know, so you bypass a lot of that stuff when you can do it all yourself. And I'm very lucky that I can do it myself. I recorded the whole album in the room behind us in my house. So the album didn't cost a penny to make, you know. So that's one big plus. But I think the downside to it obviously is like, you know, you don't have any extra influence. So that nobody can say like, hey man, you don't need a 15-minute song. That's self-indulgent, you know, let's trim it down. You don't have anybody sort of like containing you a little bit. So you do have to kind of like edit yourself. You have to keep yourself in check, otherwise you can just go crazy, self-indulgent, like my first album.
Well, because I can imagine, especially now in these times of social distancing, there's a lot of kind of bubbles being created where you don't really get out of at times. So do you have somebody like a soundboard who you'll show the music to kind of figure out where? I
don't really, no. Okay. I do have people that I could do that with, but I don't. You
prefer not to?
I keep it until the whole thing is done.
Okay. So what if? Well, I was going to ask. Well, what is that moment like then, when you've created this whole thing and kind of nobody else has heard it, and then you kind of have to let your soul bare and leave your soul bare and show it to somebody?
But that's where we're at now. Yeah, that's. I mean, you've obviously heard the record.
I've heard it. Yes.
Everybody else has heard the one song, you know. I mean, my family and stuff have heard the record and a few friends, but that's it, you know.
Okay.
So I'm a harsh like critic of myself. So along the way, I try and be organized, and I try and critique myself and take a little bit of distance, then listen fresh. And I'm pretty brutally honest with myself. And this is my 7th record now doing it myself. So I've kind of got a bit of a process that I use to keep it contained. But then, showing it to somebody, I don't know, maybe it's an insecurity thing. Like maybe, like if I show it to somebody and it's done, then it's too late. Whatever their criticisms are, it doesn't matter because it's too late. You know?
Well, that's one thing that's always fascinated me about musicians and artists in general, is that on the one hand, they've always been somewhat sensitive and kind of shy in some ways, but then there's something that gets them on that stage. There's something that they feel they need to express in a way. And this is going to be my third kind of iteration of the same question, but what is that?
I wish I knew, man. I think the same thing. I mean, it definitely applies to me. I mean, I'm quite a mild guy day by day. I'm quite, introverted. But I keep myself to myself. I've got a very small circle. I'm very un-rock and roll. But then, as soon as I'm on stage, it's not a different person. It's me. It's all me. But it's just it's a different part of me. You know what I mean? And I'm amazed by it as well. Like stand-up comedians, how they can get up on stage and then you meet them and they're like really like not funny at all. They're quite serious guys. So that kind of like that contrast is an interesting one. I don't know.
And what's interesting then is that in this time, the other side of you doesn't get to come out as much because we can't have live shows. So have you noticed that maybe you're drawn more inwards now in writing and that kind of stuff?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Well, I've had to slow down really because it's only so much you can do because everywhere, even though like I'm ready to go, everything else is closed, So it's forced me for the first time ever to kind of slow down, and I struggled with it at the start because I'm not used to that. I'm used to just going all the time. The problem is now that I've gotten comfortable slowing down, and things are starting to come back to normal again. I'm like, I can't be dealing with like normality again. I'm quite happy just
stay here for a while.
Yeah, keep it going a bit longer, So I'm gonna have to kick myself to get back out there and do it again. But I think as soon as I do a few shows again, I'll have I'll have to back.
And so finally, what do you hope that this? Can I assume that you want people other than just to enjoy the music? Do you want them to kind of make them think or make them feel something more than just moving in a way?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the people that like this record will probably already think like I think. They're probably going to get it and agree with it. But I think, people that I don't think I'm going to convert anybody that isn't already on my. But I think hopefully it can just give people confidence that you are right. We don't have to like think the world's gone crazy. Is it just me or whatever? You are right. The world is fucking crazy. You know what I mean? So, I'm just saying it loud and proud on this record. I'm not putting it politely. I'm not doing it diplomatically. I'm just saying it loud and proud because I feel like, it's the truth. These are age-old truths that all of us know deep down, really. So hopefully, yeah, it might give people a little bit more fire in their belly to just get back to those old-fashioned principles of right and wrong, and stand behind them without fear or lack of confidence. And just because the truth is simple, really. We all know it. So hopefully, this record is just reminding us of that.
And on those words, James, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, man. Yeah.
All right.